Um, Again, thank you everyone for joining us today for day 2 of Techwadi conference. I'm super excited to have some amazing speakers here to represent both the investor side and the founder side of the journey. Just before we start off, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Priya Rajan, Managing Director at Silicon Valley Bank. We're an innovation bank. We've been around for 35 plus years, and I oversee the MENA market for the bank, working with funds and founders coming from the region, such as these esteemed panelists, as they expand their footprint into the global markets. With that said, I would love to introduce my fellow panelists to quickly introduce themselves Twitter style, and we'll dive right in from there. Amit, do you want to start?
Sure. Thank you, Priya. Pleased to be here, part of this kind of wonderful kind of panel. My name is Amit Agarwal. I'm the CFO of Trukker. I started my journey in my career, professional career, with auditing. That's when I worked with KPMG and BDO. Quickly realized I wanted to do something more, changed into investments when I started my career at Goldman back in 2006. Ended up spending 11 years in different offices, focusing on leverage finance to all the way to public markets and M&A, and a lot of it in the Middle East. Left that after 11 years stint, did 3 years of kind of VC investments, looked at a lot of Silicon Valley kind of companies, and kind of invested in tech companies. Around 7 months ago, connected with Gaurav. I wanted to do more something entrepreneur, and then I said, okay, let's join a kind of a steady, kind of a good boat to on. We connected well, and that's where I am. So that's kind of a nutshell. I've done from advisory to investing to now kind of running operating roles. So that's kind of my background.
You know, accountants have a special place in my heart. Me, myself being a CPA myself. But a steady is not Trucker. Trucker is like this. So I don't know what you're talking about, steady. We'll talk about more on that. But Bader?
Hi, my name is Bader Ataya. I'm the Chief Growth Officer and one of the co-founders at Kitopi. I'm responsible for our growth across markets, across verticals, and making sure we work with the best brands across all our kitchens. Prior to Kitopi, I had prior entrepreneurial experiences. I co-founded a business called mumsworld.com, which is today one of the largest shopping sites for everything mother, baby, and child in the region as well. In between Mumsworld and Kitopi, I went to continue my education and I did a master's degree. And that is, so that's me in a nutshell. I'll let Tushar introduce himself next.
Okay.
Tushar, you're still on mute.
Tushar, you're on mute.
Sorry, great to be here. I'm Tushar Singhvi. I lead development and investments for Crescent Enterprises, which is a business group headquartered in UAE. We have operations across 15 countries, and we have 2 investment platforms, one of which is Event, which is our venture capital platform. We invest in early and growth stage companies cross market, MENA, our home market, Asia and India, and the US. So excited to be here and share some of our learning.
Before we dive into some of the hard conversations, some of the hard questions I'm going to throw at you guys, we'll start with the icebreaker. Pandemic has kind of been different for all. Everyone has taken a new hobby that is something that even surprised themselves. I can start with myself. I used to just burn the house down boiling water. Now I can actually cook food that people can eat. And my son appreciates and compares it to my mom, so which is like a win. So maybe, Tushar, we'll start with you. What is something you picked up that surprised you?
Yeah, a bunch of things. Well, I mean, I learned how to play the piano when I was a kid and haven't done it since then. My kids were learning, so joined them, learning, refreshing my skills and doing it along with them. But besides that, my wife forced me into baking along with her, but that was fun. And then a bit of gardening with the kids, which was also fun.
That's all amazing.
So when lockdown first started, I was actually in New York and I found it very hard to exercise and stay active. So I started a 30-day yoga challenge on YouTube. It was just 10 minutes every morning for 30 days. And I was hooked. Till today, before I pick up my phone, before I speak to anyone or do anything, I do my 10-minute morning stretch. I highly suggest everyone go to YouTube and check it out. You'll start your day super focused, super energized, and super fresh. So definitely give it a try.
That's great. That's my 5-minute journal. That's amazing. Perfect. Amit?
Yeah, I mean, I also did Tushar, right? You can't avoid when you were locked at home to not do the chores and help your wife and the family to do the things, right? So I did my part as well there. But that was a force. That was not as a hobby. That was as a forced thing to do. Where as a hobby, I would say I picked up something which was before even starting getting into auditing and audit. I used to do technical charts. I learned very early on in my career to study stock market. Never Goldman and all these things never allowed me to spend time and focus on that part, which I used that kind of COVID period to kind of hone my skills on that. But again, now with Trucker, that is again back in the bunch, but I used that 6 months, the lockdown period a lot, kind of honing my skills on the technical charts and all of that.
That's great. Let's dive right in. I know we have like 23 minutes left. Scale. I think that is one of the questions that comes up all the time. I think maybe we'll start with Amit and Bader. We all know like really significant fraction of the company that raise a seed end up with a good exit, let alone moving from one stage to another. You've both been through those peaks and valleys, one more than the other. So would love to hear from you. Like Trucker has raised about 25 million in Kitopi. As of now, it's 120 million, potentially more in the near future. So what are some of the lessons that you've learned through these journeys that stands out that got you to where you are today? I think it'll be very helpful for the founders and investors listening in. And whoever.
So shall I go first, Bader?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll say again, I'll give my experience that I've seen this in the last 6-8 months by being part of Trucker, but obviously I work so closely with the founders, Pradeep and Gaurav, that I picked it up. In the business where we are in Trucker, we are disrupting a sector which is a traditional business, not kind of very slow over the years. People have been doing something for 30, 40 years. So we are changing that, disrupting that market through our technology. That itself is an opportunity and a challenge as well, because we are dealing with people on the other side who are not used to it. It's like a behavioral change for them, from the customers to the demand and supply side. So that's where the kind of what we say is the learnings out of this is that how do you get through that? You build the technology. So technology is there, but how do you get people along with you to buy into the technology, bring the behavioral change? That is, as a business, has been the biggest. But I would also say one thing is that the learnings out of kind of building the team is the relationships. Most of the startups are started by young people who have new ideas and all of it. When Gaurav and Pradeep did it, they were entrepreneurs. They had experience of 10, 15 years when they got into this. So that helps us like a maturity of dealing with investors. So most of the investors are like people who you have a matured conversation. They believe in what we are saying and the relationship you build over time. So that helps a lot of way in doing what you're doing, saying, and puts kind of credibility in the plan. So that has helped Trucker in a way create that confidence from the investors and kind of gain the confidence to deliver. Yeah, that's what I would say in terms of the kind of where we see kind of the challenge is part of this is again how do we can change that behavioral kind of overall change in the grand scheme of themes where we are trying to achieve. But that's where I bother. Up to you.
Thank you so much, Amit. I think on the learning, I completely agree with you, Amit. It is super important to always be learning and listening to feedback from your investors, from your team, from customers, and in our case, from the restaurants we work with. So 3 years ago, when we started Kitopi, we were doing something that no one else had done before. So we were, drawing and redrawing processes, techniques on how to cook, how we were going to scale, re-looking at our business plan and tweaking it. And then we were also going out to investors and saying, okay, this is our vision. this is what we are trying to do, getting their feedback and immediately challenging ourselves internally as founders. I think because we didn't have an example elsewhere to build this business, we had to be very open to anyone's feedback. And we were lucky enough to have partners such as Tushar, who's on this panel, who really guided us, shape Kitopi into what it is today. So I think one thing is, really listening to everyone that is nice enough to give you feedback helps you tremendously. I think the other thing that was super important for us was our ability to really leverage momentum. So very early on, we built traction with restaurants that wanted to join our platform and grow globally. And we had a very compelling vision for these brands. So restaurants came on board, some of the best brands in the region, and these brought with them the customers that were looking to eat their food. And leveraging on that momentum, we were able to scale Kitopi across the region and really look outwards to make this a global place. So I think that's another lesson that has helped us reach the scale that we have gotten to today, and will hopefully help us continue to grow.
And you raised quite a bit of points in terms of global go-to-market for other. How do you expand? We'll come back to that specifically. I do have a follow-on for you, but it's a perfect segue into Tushar. So Tushar, from the both sides of the table conversation, from your side, from investor lens, you've helped founders like Bader, and many, many more through that journey and through that scale. What are some of the key lessons? I would say, I know there are probably, each of them differs based on the stage and sector and go-to-market. But if you have to pick more on like some of the basic things, like top 3 things that you would give an advice as they scale to avoid some of the mistakes that founders do, what would that be?
So yeah, I mean, we've been fortunate to work with founders like Bader and the Kitopi founding team who really, executed. They built an execution machine. It was as rapid and as it was from the very get-go. So I think one is, of course, establishing that product market fit earlier on. But once that is kind of established, the business model around it, it's executing with speed, failing fast, deploying multiple growth hacks, kill the ones which are not working, but double down on the ones which are working. And across our portfolio, very few are able to execute in that way. And where we try and help is we're obviously seeing a whole range of startups in different markets, in different sectors. It's trying to, and we're learning along with them. We're learning lessons along with them, but trying to bring that perspective and provide those insights at the right time. In some cases, I mean, Kitopi was obviously a very nascent concept back then, which Kitopi really built up. But in many other cases where we've seen similar concepts in the market, it's taking learnings from those markets, trying to apply them in the markets that we're invested in. Also, given we have a pretty broad range of operating businesses and some of the domains that we do invest in the tech, on the tech side, are businesses which have applications and synergies with our businesses, like energy tech, which is applications in our oil and gas business, supply chain tech, where we have a ports and logistics business, where we have 40 years of operational experience and learnings ourselves. So trying to provide that, and part of the reason we are investing is, of course, to learn and help digitally transform ourselves. But at the same time, also providing a playground for companies to come and pilot with us and see what works, what doesn't work, and provide that sectoral operational experience. I think finally, I would agree, one has to be absolutely open and learn and be prepared to pivot along the way. There'll be multiple pivots along the way. But then really, as I said before, doubling down where you did right and moving.
And just great points, Tushar. And again, I might have to come back to you specifically on how does that translate into when you're investing both in direct opportunities such as Kitopi and also in fund investments. Let's talk about another important topic, culture, right? Culture matters for startup to not just survive, but thrive. More than ever, that the pandemic and uncertainty has proved us that we need to have each other to be able to kind of survive and thrive through this uncertain environment. And hopefully you were at the tail end of it. Maybe we'll start with you, Tushar. How does that work within your fund, and how do you impart that in your portfolio companies, either the ones that's already in your portfolio or the ones you select to be a part of Crescent family?
Sure. So that's a super important part, and the founders and entrepreneurs that we look to partner with, culture is extremely important. Just to clarify, so we're not a fund per se, we are a corporate and we're deploying balance sheet capital. So fundamentally, we have a long-term horizon. We are looking to partner and build businesses along with, extremely capable and ambitious partners in the form of entrepreneurs. So having that long-term vision, clarity on that long-term vision to really build a meaningful business and a large scalable business in the long term, and not have a short-term approach of I'm going to flip it and exit in a couple of years or that. So that's super important, which very much resonates with our ethos in terms of long-term investing and long-term growth. Secondly, we are a family business, and our culture is, very, very cohesive in that respect. And startups are families. You're working day and night towards a common goal, towards a common vision. And really that's what makes us resonate. So founders and entrepreneurs who can really build companies like they're their own families and integrate that kind of value system within the company from earlier on, because as you scale, that's the most difficult part, to keep the culture intact. But that's what we really try and spend enough time to get to know the founders and see whether that's intact. The third thing I would say is, sustainability and ESG principles is very important to us. We look at that before investment, we apply that lens before investment, and obviously see that, because we fundamentally believe that the most successful and sustainable businesses will be the ones which are responsible companies. They're not just profit driven, but they're driven to the overall stakeholder base and really serving the community, because startups employ thousands of people and there's a whole community around that. So being responsible in that approach, we believe will win in the long term. And that's something that we work very closely with our portfolio.
Thank you so much, Tushar. We're gonna come. I know we're running short on time, so moving to the next topic. Again, pandemic has kind of made uncertainty, expect the unexpected as a new normal. And one thing that 2020 has taught us is to stay nimble, stay agile, and stay on top, to be adaptive and be adaptable to stay on top. And two of the companies that have done really well is right here, which is Kitopi and Trukker. So maybe over to Amit and Bader. Priorities change for all. Just looking back, what was one thing that you were most proud of that kind of highlights your startup's adaptability in making to where you are? Given, Bader, we talked offline, Cloud Kitchen is a very hard space, and you probably were impacted significantly early on. So how did you come out of it? And maybe you can highlight some of the wins, and same thing on the logistics with Amit on your end.
Yeah, actually, I'm glad you brought that up, Priya. So when the lockdown first started, a lot of people assumed that suddenly food deliveries was booming, cloud kitchens were a booming business, and numbers were going up. In fact, in the early days, there was a lot of uncertainty from the consumer, not knowing how they could get COVID, as Kitopi, not knowing if our teammates could get sick, and a lot of precautions on health and safety. So demand actually tanked in the short term. Above and beyond that, supply chains got disrupted. Your confidence as an employer going to work or getting your team to go to work was also kind of shifted. So we had to adapt very quickly. So one of the first things we did is we had a work from anywhere policy, which for our culture going to the pandemic was a bit strange, because even as admin and as people that don't work in the kitchens, we were all in the offices. Actually, we were all in the kitchens together all the time. And we immediately had to adapt to working from anywhere. I was stuck in New York. We had people stuck in London. So people were displaced all over. And I think we were quickly able to adapt to this new type of behavior. It was bumpy along the way, and I'm sure it was the same for everyone, but we were able to adapt to that. And I think one of the things I'm most proud of is we were able to launch a whole new vertical during the early days of the pandemic. We realized we had this massive supply chain that we were using to cook food for the best brands. And we also noticed our consumers were finding it difficult to shop and get the groceries they needed, especially in places that had full lockdowns. So we actually launched Shop Kitopi, which are the grocery business, completely remotely, leveraging everything we already had at Kitopi within 3 weeks. And that, lockdown is done in most of the markets we're in, and that business continues to grow today. So I think that is one thing we are very proud of across the board here at Kitopi.
Yeah, at Trucker, again, right, we had a very strict kind of lockdowns, which was the kind of things went to. But given the business where we are core logistics, moving kind of cargo from plant to a supply chain disruption, we can keep it. Obviously, when there was restrictions, we were not allowed to move. But once the restrictions was over, people said, okay, supply chain has to work. We were the first ones we have to be forefront to deliver and make it happen. Even though everyone, as Bader was saying, everyone was so kind of nervous about employees' welfare and like how do they don't pick it up. They were nervous to get out of their homes, but how do you kind of make still work it? And logistics is still very much kind of a person's business still, as much as we are trying to change it to technology. So it was a challenge, but I think that's where kind of everyone rose up to the occasion and said this is required for the business, for the overall supply chain to work, and we delivered. And then in the process, I think the biggest thing which would help is we got the regulators and the people who deal with, who were always used to be in person doing things, we were able to bring that digital transformation as well there. So they were also were taking us weeks and months to convince them for adapting a technology was done probably overnight, in some instances, which helped us win a business. Our customers started appreciating more of what we are doing, because we were the ones who were available, and the traditional brokers were not able to kind of meet the demands because just they were not set up for that. So I think for us, COVID, obviously we adapted the business and we were ready because of our technology platform, and we could just digitize. It helped us, our digitization along the way. And obviously on the, as I said, the customers benefited. We as an organization obviously had a very good run, and everyone, I think it was a kind of lot of good things came out for us. I'm saying good came out because we're still not through it, but we think we have certainly kind of the hurdle there.
We're gonna call we're through it. I mean, I think it's happening. But just the points that both of you highlighted just shows one of the reports that SVB recently released shows that adversity drives innovation, and this is a classic: adversity drives innovation and thriving, right? Thank you for sharing. Tushar, from your lens, when I spoke to a ton of investors last year, significant amount of time was just spent on working with our current portfolio companies to make sure they were okay. That's almost the first half. The second half is when they were, okay, what are the other opportunities that's happening? But now if I fast forwarded to today, it is one of the hottest market, continuing to now multiple term sheets are happening. Companies are raising strong dollars and optimism all around. So looking back, because we don't want to miss out, because this is an uncertainty and this is a lesson learned. What is like one lesson through all of the scenario plannings and such that you had worked with your portfolio companies that you're like, that is kind of one for the books that, we're going to have that as a best practice, almost like a business continuity practice for all of our portfolio companies? What would that one advice?
Yeah, I think it would be, and this is obviously relevant to a crisis like a pandemic, but in general, it's really plan, just plan for the worst and then start improvising and adjusting as things improve. So you need to have a plan, and this forced us to obviously look at multiple scenarios which were changing week on week. But it's just planning for the worst. Assume the worst, and then you need to quickly be able to adapt and improvise and adjust yourself as things get better to kind of capture the growth opportunity out there. Of course, cash is always king, and that's been proven out even more during the pandemic. So really ensuring you have enough of a runway, 12, 18 months, again, whatever, depending on the business, but to always have your eye on the cash and ensuring that, shocks like this just don't disrupt your own company. So those are there are of course many other things, but those are the two.
That's great. I know we're at the last 3 minutes.
We would
so I'm going to throw
reinforce
one final question and we'll do a wrap up, specifically on building global footprint. And Bader, you had touched upon this earlier. You both, you and Amit, you've had, both of the companies have a strong global footprint, one more than the other, obviously, because of the stage that you're in. What is the criteria that you would look for a company that is expanding into new markets? What is like, okay, this is a criteria I need to evaluate to say, okay, that's a big TAM. Is it TAM, or is it like a fit, or is it a market need? So what would that one thing be? If you can keep your answer short, because I want to kind of obviously keep it to the time as well. But Bader, maybe we'll start with you.
Okay, sure. Actually, I don't think there are tons of frameworks online that can get product market fit, that can analyze TAM. I would focus more on the when. When are you ready business as founders to stretch your bandwidth over multiple markets, over a global footprint? So to keep it short, that's what I'd focus on.
And how about you, Amit? How about that for Trucker?
So for Trucker, I would say there is a talent, right? When we look at the kind of the geographies we are going, because there is still the execution is because the technology is very transferable, right? It's the question of the execution on the ground. So the first thing we look at is building the right team on the ground, because that's where we believe it's so much is people and culture. If you just keep that right, then you can execute anything on it. Sorry, Priya, I think you're muted.
Oh, sorry. We're new to Zoom, right? Or Hublot or Hopin. But just question for both of you. What is next big thing for Trucker and Kitopi? If you're making the news today and folks are going to write up about this, let's start with Amit.
Yeah, for us, I think so. We are kind of very kind of already present in multiple geographies. So for 2021, our kind of key focus will be obviously deepening our going into the market as a large in where we are, deepening the kind of our kind of products and kind of services in this markets, and then the geographic expansion. I'm very excited, like where with the geographic expansion we are going in. As you said, like where we are in our journey, I think we think there's so much to be achieved, but we are going. Kind of expanding our very, very strong plans for the rest of the year in terms of geographic expansion.
Amazing. Bader?
Goal this year is actually to be the most customer-obsessed organization in the world, and we are leveraging the tech we've built and evolving it massively this year. We manage over 200 brands that are on average across 5 kitchens. So that's 1,000 restaurants, and we've built amazing products to help us do this. We are now building products to help us reach the customers better and get the food that they want on time whenever they want it on their terms. So that's going to be the next big thing for Kitopi.
That's great. Yeah, let's wrap it up with we'll start with Tushar. What is one advice? Again, as I said, we're going to call the pandemic is over. Hopefully soon we'll all get vaccinated. What is one advice that a founder or startup or an investor listening in today that they should think about as they're building their fund or the startup? Tushar, we'll start with you. Looking into 2021 and beyond.
I would say focus on what is the problem you're trying to solve, and you need to believe in that problem that you're trying to solve. The rest is execution, the size of the problem, etc. But you need to really passionately believe in that?
So I think you can work from anywhere today, and you can work remotely. So look for dormant opportunities across the globe. Look for amazing talent from anywhere in the world. Invest in innovation and recalibrate the culture and your team for this really bright future that we are about to enter.
Final thoughts.
No, but I echo what kind of Bader was saying, right? It's taking the team and the culture, right? How do you go and kind of execution will follow, right? And that's where for us, I think it's also the same thing. It's just focusing on the culture and the team. And obviously with enhancing the team, right? What we build as a technology, we need to keep enhancing just that level of you need to keep enhancing that. So we do that.
That's a wrap. I know we're a minute over, but thank you so much for your time this morning. Appreciate all of the insights that you shared. So hopefully folks who are listening in, you enjoyed it as much as I did as well, but enjoy the rest of the Techwadi. But thanks again, you all. Have a good day.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Thanks. Bye.